Welcome to Wisdom Journey, the podcast where we explore the path of building an online business from the ground up. Here, I share my wins, struggles, lessons, and experiments so you can learn, adapt, and grow alongside me. I also interview experts in their respective field. Whether you're just starting out or looking for new strategies to scale, this is your space to find inspiration and practical wisdom. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to take you on to this journey. Welcome back to Wisdom Journey, the podcast where we break down what it really takes to build and scale online businesses into this fast-changing digital world. In this episode, we're diving into one of the biggest shifts entrepreneurs and marketers have faced in decades, the rise of AI-driven search. My guest today is Michael Buckbee, AI search expert, founder, and marketing leader. Michael has worked at the crossroads of marketing and technology for nearly 20 years, with clients ranging from 100 companies and YC startups to federal agencies and even rock bands. Today, is the co-founder of Knowatoa, a platform helping businesses track their brand visibility and rankings in AI search engines like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Google Gemini. What started as a simple experiment has now become a must-have tool for search professionals navigating the new frontier of AI search. Michael is here to unpack how AI is rewriting the rules of search, what founders and business owners should do to protect their traffic, and how to spot opportunities in the middle of the disruption. Welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. I really appreciate it. So.
Yeah. You said AI search is already mainstream with over 1 billion users. Why do you believe? Why do you say that?
Sure. So I think a lot of people have a question, which is sort of like, do I need to care about AI search right now? I have a ton of things to do. I'm trying to start my business. There's always more things to do than there is time.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real tendency to think of AI still as like, oh, this new gimmicky thing that maybe some people are using, but it's not mainstream. And if we just do the thought experiment of, all right, we're going to pretend ChatGPT doesn't exist. We're going to pretend like Perplexity and all these new services don't exist. We still have to look at like, what is Google doing? And Google has clearly said AI is the future of search. So this isn't my opinion. I feel like this is pretty, this is just what's happening. And literally this week, Google made a huge change to Chrome where now Gemini is in every version of Chrome. In the upper right is just a little tab. You can hit Command G in your browser and get Gemini right there and ask it to do things. Ask it to find things for you. Ask it to summarize a page. And all of those are aspects of AI search, and it's just becoming more and more and more mainstream. Again, just even if we pretend everything doesn't exist but Google, there's still changes we need to make for our businesses.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about a lot of persons are pretending, it sounds like a child. When a child is scared of someone or something, usually they'll take their two hands and they'll close their eyes, and at that point in time they cannot see the thing. But it doesn't mean that that thing would disappear because you close your eyes with your hands. You can no longer see that thing. That the thing would not keep on moving or doing whatever they want to do.
Absolutely. And the other thing I see is, so we sort of talking about that thought experiment. The other thing I see is people looking at a lot of stats and I think doing a not great job of interpreting those. So something I see a lot is like, oh, well, like ChatGPT, it pushes way less traffic than Google does. That, maybe a 10-to-1 difference on your website. And I think that's misleading. And there's a couple reasons for that. One of which is that if you look at like the traffic that Google sends your website, probably half of it is navigational. People who have already learned about your business somewhere else, who have done some search, have interacted with you before, and they're typing your brand name in and trying to get to your site. And then, another maybe 30% of that is, hey, let's try to figure things out. And this is where content marketing comes in. Maybe you're a B2B site, so you have a lot of educational content. Maybe you're an e-commerce site, you have a lot of review content and people finding that kind of thing. And then you have this like very small piece of the traffic that Google sends you that is high intent, which is, hey, I'm looking to buy this thing. Hey, I'm looking to solve this painful problem I have.
Yeah.
And when you look at the behavior patterns of like what is happening inside of ChatGPT and these other services, it's almost all of that. But if you're really trying to make a decision and you need advice about this and you're trying to figure out this complicated thing, the AI experience is so much better than the traditional search experience. that I think in terms of parity of high intent traffic, it's a lot closer than you would think. And we do see this borne out. A lot of times, if you have any sort of attribution software, you look and you find, oh, the actual traffic that's coming from ChatGPT is converting at a much higher rate than the average traffic that's coming from Google.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I wanted us to clarify before we even go into the depths of winning AI search, because the type of traffic that comes from AI search is completely different from the traditional type we would get from writing a blog post and ranking on Google in the old times and then having people click on it and go to the site.
Yeah. So I mean, so I used to be director of demand generation at a big cybersecurity company, and part of that was being over the SEO team, and part of that was figuring out like what should we write about. And a lot of what we would write about is very low intent but high traffic things. So these would be educational, and they would be to our ideal clients, our ideal customer profile, things they would be interested in, but they weren't the very low intent stuff. So, a cybersecurity company, we'd write about proxy servers, and, the different kinds and how they worked and stuff. And, that was a fundamental sort of thing. But that article about proxy servers got a ton of traffic. Most of it wasn't differentiated, but it was still helpful. But that's the kind of thing that we're seeing so much better responses from within an AI tool, that if you want to ask the same questions of, ChatGPT, what's a proxy server? What's the difference between a proxy server and web application firewall? And to be able to, get responses that go up and down, the different levels of technology and your particular use case, and to clarify things. It's just an experience you can't compete with writing a static web page.
Yeah.
And so, our pitch in general is you should stop trying to compete in these areas where you're so there's just so many disadvantages you have.
Yeah.
And instead, try to go further down the funnel, try to write more for things where, there's more leverage, where there's more uniqueness to your experience, and to make it a little more branded and to be used in other contexts. So
Yeah, one of the, for most of the websites, the blogs, right? They would write content, would expect traffic to come on the sites, and they show ads to the visitors, and that's how they made money. But right now,
well, I think that's an interesting
would that be
point, which
affected,
is
or
that, oh,
like would
yes,
that be
definitely. I
affected?
mean, yes. So, I mean, when you're describing like, hey, you have a website, you make money off of ads, to my
Yeah,
mind, I classify those people as publishers.
yeah,
And
yeah,
most websites and most businesses aren't publishers. Like we're sort of, they're sort of mini publishers where you're a B2B site, you're an e-commerce site, you have a law firm in Chicago or something, like you're selling services. You're not getting money from ads. That's really a very small portion of the websites. It's a disproportionate amount of people in marketing talking about that, because these are big publications and they talk a lot about it. But if you're starting an online business, if you're trying to get things going, it's a different sort of calculation. Like here's an interesting thing. In traditional SEO, one of the first things you want to do is make sure that Google can what's called index your site, which is just read all the information about it, add it to its index, and that's considered a very positive thing. That I have my marketing site, it says what features we do, what problems we solve, who we help. We want Google to know that. But a lot of times the conversation around AI search, the language changes, and it's like, oh, well, OpenAI is scraping our site. It's doing this bad thing to like take our data and do stuff with it. But really, if you're not a publisher, you want it to do that. You want to train these AI models to know about your business, to know about your brand. And
yeah.
that's one of those, I think, fundamental changes that, you need to consider as you're trying to execute an AI search strategy.
Yeah. Well, and for me, I'm curious for publishers, because I feel like while we're having this conversation, we should categorize the two
Sure.
online businesses into publishers and non-publishers, and of course, there's so many other subcategories for people who are non-publishers. But for the
Yeah.
publishers, is there hope, or has the train left the station?
I think I'll say this. I think publishers that offered very low value content that were relying on just driving a really large number of searches with really low intent is a business model that didn't add a lot of value in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think now is most likely going to suffer from these changes. I think the flip side of that is that, if you do have a service that is offering value that you're trying to get new customers for, that you're trying to get new prospects for, I think there could be a lot of upside here for you because, a lot of the rules change and a lot of the different pieces of all of this changes.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Now let's look towards the non-publishers.
Sure.
One of the things ChatGPT is that ChatGPT, I like to use the word in this context. The large language models, they prime the visitor. So when they get to your site, they already know what to do, right? Compared to Google, where so more like the traffic is what more than it was before.
Yeah, how I describe this is the search journey, which is that, and this is very similar to the buyer's journey, depending upon your particular niche, where, you start up at the top, like, oh, people have a problem. They try to then define, like, what are the edges of that problem? What are some potential solutions? Oh, this looks like a better, strategy to solve this. Now, what are some specific products or services within that? Who has the best thing? What can be recommended? Will this work for my particular scenario? And before, that used to be a series of a dozen searches, and we're all really good at this. Like, you're an expert at this, I'm an expert at this, everyone listening to this is an expert at, hey, I'm going to search for something, I have a problem, I'm going to abstract out that problem to something I can put into Google and, as a couple words, and then I'm going to look at the top like 6 results. Maybe I'm going to click on half of those as new tabs, look at these, is this what I was looking for? If not, then I'm going to close those tabs down, I'm going to do a deeper search, and I'm going to do that 5 or 6 times until I get down to like, oh, these 3 or 4 different, services or products look really where that initial search all the way down to the recommendation, ChatGPT is just giving that information to you. And that's blind to all of our analytics tools. It's blind to a lot of our attribution tools. And, it's a different world. It's a world where you still make a lot of money. It's a world where you can still get a lot of customers, but it is a different world.
Yeah. At the beginning of the episode, you mentioned that Google is scaling most of its its own search product, and it's pivoting towards AI first approach. Could it be that Google is wrong? We've seen countless times, sometimes with back in the day when Google would do helpful updates, we realized that the update itself wasn't even helpful in the first place. That they end up blacklisting people who are helpful, and benefiting those who are just putting out spam. Could it be that this is the case for them?
I think there's certainly going to be missteps along the way. I don't think Google has figured this out entirely. And, one thing that indicates that is they're doing so many different attempts and user interfaces and options and all of this, where right now they have AI mode, which is sort of like an assisted search service. They have Gemini that you can use directly, like ChatGPT, with a bunch of different flavors. They have a bunch of different labs products for both like learning and for, content generation and sort of a blur of those. They still have traditional, 10 blue links kind of search. And now they have AI models they're building into Chrome. They have, all of these different tools, as well as like, that's not even getting into stuff like Android and, voice interfaces and other things that are becoming increasingly popular. And that's a sign they haven't figured it out. And I do think, again, is this a flash in the pan? Something that comes up a lot in traditional search and now in AI search is search quality, or like the search experience. There was a really interesting thing, HubSpot. So HubSpot's a huge publisher of, I guess they're not a publisher in the way we're talking about it. They're a B2B, they're a B2B software company that does, email marketing software and hosts your website and CRM and all of that. They're one of the top people in the content strategy thought leader space.
Yeah.
And they used to rank really well for a term, which was resignation letter, which is like, hey, I'm going to resign from my job. I need to get a fairly polite sounding resignation letter to send to my boss, to send to HR, that says, like, here's the sort of basic stuff. And now I need to get out of here. And
Yeah.
they were one of the top ranks for that. They got millions of visitors a month for that term. And it was not a great experience because you'd land on that page and it was like that page on their site was like SEO'd to death, which is that it was like, hey, what's a resignation letter? But like, I know what it is. I just search for it.
Yeah.
And like, what? Who uses a resignation letter? And like, hey, what's your
like
experience? And because those are all the things that traditional Google SEO
the demands,
rewarded.
yeah.
And it was very stilted, and it wasn't a good experience. And then you would click on a button on HubSpot's site, and you'd go through, like, you have to enter your email address, and like all you want is like, I just need like 3 paragraphs I can copy
That's
into an
all I
email.
need.
And so it's this whole thing. And Google replaced that with an AI overview. And the AI overview was like, hey, we just generated one for you right now, like at the top of the Google search results. And there was a button like, hey, do you want to open this in a Google Doc, or do you want to open this in a Gmail? We'll open a new email for you. Either way, it's like one click. And HubSpot, who is at the top, the best, of this content SEO strategy execution, there's nothing they can do to compete with that. Like, how do you possibly compete with that? And that search experience is so much better. And I think that's a lot of the shifts that are happening here, where, how we sort of got into Knowatoa is we were working on other projects and we started to do more and more AI assisted software development. And as a consequence of that, I saw personally the number of Google searches I did daily just drop like a rock, because I was no longer needing to do like, oh, I have this like tricky loop, or I'm trying to solve this problem. And then I would
Yeah.
search Google and I'd find some things, and then I would take it and I'd like tweak it back to my stuff. I was just like doing the job. And instead of like having to do that context switching, it would just happen inside of the AI assisted coding tools. And, Google is a company of developers. I'm sure they saw the same thing internally.
Yeah.
And that was a real, activation moment for like, oh, this is actually something different. So,
Yeah. You mentioned Knowatoa. You're helping brands understand how they appear in AI search results. Can you explain what's at stake if a business isn't showing up?
sure. These are the tools, so let's just talk about ChatGPT, trying to just be very practical and direct here.
Okay.
What we're seeing is people are developing a relationship with these tools. They're using them for, kind of a companion, kind of as like a check and as an advisor for like all sorts of tasks. And part of that is that they're using them to get recommendations and searches and, figure all these different things out in the context of this larger use. And if you're not part of that, if you're not thought of well by ChatGPT, it's not going to recommend you. An example I bring up a lot of times is, Wells Fargo, which is this huge bank that's in the United States. They had some real bad ethical things happen a couple years ago. They were opening up checking accounts for people, and the people didn't know they were. They received a huge Federal Trade Commission fine, the largest ever, all this stuff. And if you do a Google search for them, what comes up is like, oh, where's the nearest Wells Fargo ATM? Oh, here's how you log into your Wells Fargo checking account. If you do a search in ChatGPT knows all this information. It has an opinion about Wells Fargo, and it will say like, hey, before you go with them, you should really think about their ethics and like check their stuff out. And that's a new scenario, which is that there's this sort of companion that's handling all this stuff. And, Google has deep research. They have AI mode, which is a similar sort of thing, which is using different versions of Gemini, their AI model, to be an intermediate step between, me asking questions and a list of search results. And there's a lot of technical pieces in there of like, how do I make sure that this like in between bot can like read all these, can read my site, can recommend me? Does it think of me positively? Does it have the right information about what I actually do as a company? And so that's what we're focused on with Knowatoa, is just trying to get like, here's all the information that's correct. Does it stay correct? Is it up to date? And hey, over here, do you think positively about us? Will you recommend us over your competitors? And that results in both a mix of, hey, this is a positive for us as far as, everyone who interacts with us. Like, here's something, and this is, again, we're sort of changing the definition of search here.
Okay.
Something one of our customers said to us was, hey, ChatGPT is our most popular and least well-trained representative of our company, which is everybody is asking questions in ChatGPT of like, hey, is this a good company? Do they do the thing? Will they actually help me, with these things? And, I think you can probably see that in your own experience. Those are maybe the types of questions you ask. Those are certainly ones I ask.
Yeah.
And, but no one has taken the time to be like, to sit ChatGPT down and
Let's
say,
get
like,
him on our side.
Yeah, like, here's like, a new employee at your company, you would sit down and you would onboard them and you would say, like, here's our core products. Here's the problems they solve. And, we talk to a lot of companies where, they have kind of strict buying guidelines that it's a software as a service company. And so an enterprise is evaluating a bunch of these to solve a problem they have. And they have a list of things. They're like, oh, well, it has to have single sign-on. It has to have SAML-based single sign-on. And so they type into ChatGPT, hey, does Wisdom's SaaS company, does it have single sign-on? Is ChatGPT going to say yes? Or is that one of the things that often comes up in like the back part of the sales cycle where they're like, well, it's not really on our website, but if someone asks about it, we tell them. Well, ChatGPT doesn't know that. And a lot of times there's regulatory stuff, like in the EU, it's GDPR. In the US, it's HIPAA for, healthcare. And so those are often disqualifying things. So
Hey, quick break. Before we continue, I'd love for you to join the Wisdom Journey newsletter. Every week, I share exclusive insights, tools, and behind-the-scenes updates to help you stay ahead in your own journey of building an online business. It's simple, practical, and built to help you grow. Sign up today for free at the link in the description. Now, let's get back to the episode.
You ask the question, hey, is this company, HIPAA compliant? And ChatGPT says no, and you really are. Well, that's a problem. You were just excluded from consideration and you don't even know it. So there's an expanding sort of definition of what SEO actually means.
When you use the word on board, it just made everything crystal clear for me, because there are a lot of people that are in companies and they don't even know what the company they're working for do. Like literally, like well, kind of. It's not like I don't really know Sha, but it's just that, and the representatives of this company, they talk, and you're like, are you sure they're working in this company? Why does it sound like this company that they're working for, they're into drugs? Because the way everything is just mystical, and I'm like, what's happening? Using the word on board, when you work with the certain companies you work for, right? It's crystal clear what they stand for, what they want, and what they do, such that by the time you go through, you're like, oh, I'm not so sure. You're very sure. If they wake you up in the middle of the night, you're like, yeah, of course. No, that's not what the company does for. And you realize that the employees become advocates because they know what the company stands for and they can make decisions without wondering if they are doing things right or they're doing the wrong thing. I like that explanation, Michael.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I want us to take this to the next step, right? For solopreneurs, small business owners, people who have online businesses, coaches, small SaaS, not the enterprise, mega million businesses. I mean, businesses like you and I. What's the most practical first step to prepare for this AI-driven search? Because not a lot of persons are always saying, well, AI is going to come get you. And I'm like, I know. Yeah, but so what can I do, right? I've heard all this thing. It's good. It can change my life. So how can I get in on the game?
So, I mean, this is a question that comes up all the time. And so we wrote, it's called the Biscuit framework, which is an acronym for a bunch of stuff. But what it really is, yeah, it's a framework for trying to think about, hey, what are some practical things I can do right now to try to get, my site, my company to be thought of well by these AI services. And it's not something specific to us. It's something more like you can just do yourself in ChatGPT or whatever. But like one of the first things to do, as we mentioned earlier, is you want to make sure that just like your site can actually be read by all these different AI services. And it's really tricky because, with Google and Bing, they have a search console where you can actually go and like, hey, can Google read my site? Is it indexed? Like what's happening? And those tools don't exist yet for for ChatGPT or Anthropic or any of these. So we have a tool that actually checks that for you. And this is the easiest thing. And what we found is that a lot of people are using some kind of like WordPress security plugin. They're using Cloudflare. Their host, unknown to them, their web host is actually blocking a bunch of stuff that they didn't know was blocked. We see a lot of people on Google Cloud services that have that issue. And what that means is those AI services that are trying to read your site can't read it. A good one is, again, we're going to pretend nothing exists but Google. Google now has multiple different bots that have different user agents that interact with your site. And if you're letting the normal Google bot through, that's good. But you need to also now let the Google extended bot through, which is the one that works for AI mode and deep research and Gemini. And if you're not letting that through, literally you won't come up in the answers for those tools.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem. And that's an easy win. That's not like, hey, we're going to spend weeks working on this. That's like, hey, let's just make sure our site can at least be read by all of these things, with all of our existing content. So that's normally where I suggest people start. And then from there, think about your content strategy, try to write more articles that are further down the funnel. That are more, high intent. Are we the best in this category? Are we doing something else? And then think about distribution where, OpenAI, ChatGPT, they have a multi-billion-dollar relationship with Microsoft. Part of that relationship is that Microsoft owns LinkedIn and OpenAI can train on LinkedIn data. So if you're really trying to, do well in ChatGPT, you should be taking your articles and posting them to LinkedIn as well. If you're trying to influence Gemini, makes a lot more sense to do YouTube. If you're trying to, and so there's some very clear lines of distribution through this as well. And so, it goes into great detail in this Biscuit framework, but it's straightforward enough as a direction. Make sure your site can be read, change how you think about content some, and do, a more deliberate job around distribution.
So in two words, be seen, be visible, right? And then before every other thing will then start taking place. You mentioned the Biscuit framework. Is that an acronym or?
Yeah, it's curious. An acronym. And so it goes through all the different steps. And so B is for, bots. Let's see, bots, indexing, sentiment, competitive ranking, unique data sources, intelligence, and truthfulness. So, and again, it's free. There's not even an email gate. You can just go to our website, read through the Biscuit framework, take your first sort of steps into seeing, where you stand and, how things play out.
Okay. So if I was to search for the Biscuit framework, I will search for Knowatoa Biscuit framework and the site will pop up, or is there like a specific link? How easy is it for me to find on your website if I want to learn more?
Turns out there's not a lot of other people with a Biscuit framework. Okay. So you can Google, you can ask ChatGPT. But also if you go to knowatoa.com, Knowatoa, is right at the top in our main menu. It's one of our most popular things we've written. And it's, if you're the type of person who's interested in listening to stories like this from your podcast, I think it was written for you because it's at that level of like, hey, let's figure this stuff out. Let's do these things practically. Let's get going.
Yeah. Wow. One of the key things I noticed you mention and talk about, and I was like, that's good. He's going to be on my podcast. I'm going to ask him the question. You talk about content engineering, full building. You say it's a superpower for marketing. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of big words that have been thrown around. What exactly is this? Can you share me with me specific examples of of people adopting and putting this in practice?
Sure. So, like I said, I've been doing marketing and software development for a long time, and people talk about there's a content strategy and content writing, but something I've found to be personally very powerful is building online tools. And so, um, you know, a different project I had was called Send Check It, which was about email marketing subject lines, and it really came out of me trying to write better email subject lines for my own
Yeah.
companies and my own work. And so I had this list of like 10 checklist items of like, here's what I should do, here's what I shouldn't. And I turned that into a very simple website where you could go and you input the subject line of your own, and then it grades it. Now, these things are kind of equivalent. Like I could give you a blog post that says like, hey, check these 10 things before you, do your email send for your subject lines, or you can just put it in this tool and it'll do the check for you and give you some, basic sort of suggestions. And what I found is that tools just occupy a different spot in people's heads than blog posts, than written
Mm,
content. They're much more likely to recommend them. They're much more likely to link to them. They're much more likely to come back to them. And uh, and so, even from this like pretty simple sort of site and tool, it got a lot of traction, and literally millions of subject lines have been tested through that. And I've built a
yeah.
bunch of different things like that where, yeah, this could be a small piece of advice. It could be a blog post. It could be a checklist, but we've made it into a tool. And that's what I call the engineering part of it, that you put a little bit of software development on this and a little bit of effort, and it just explodes the value of it and the amount of attention you get from it. And so, I mentioned one of the things we built for Knowatoa is an AI search console, which is like you can go to our site and you can put your own site in, and we will do all the checks for you to find all of the different AI services that are trying potentially to reach your site, and give you a list of like, hey, these 5 can't reach your site because of some issue. And it's nothing we couldn't have written a blog post about that says like, hey, run this script locally and check these things. But it's so much more convenient. And, these are just growth accelerators for us to do these kind of content engineering projects.
Oh, from what you've just said, I'm already having ideas because a lot of persons when they yeah, oh, I get what tools are. Yeah, I understand what you're talking about when you mean tools. But how do I exactly come up with tools? And now you talked about checklists, turning checklists into tools, right? I know that's one approach, and it's just getting me to think about a lot of ideas because there are certain processes that have about 100 checklist items in the checklist, and turning that into a tool such that I can just put in whatever the product is and it goes through it, optimize and tell me 89%, 90%, and it gives recommendations of things I could possibly do to make it 100%. And I'm like, wow, there's so many processes I could think of. What other approach could we use for content to tools?
Yeah, and it's one of those things in the context of AI search that the AI services are going to take that checklist and, pull them in and, give that back to users if they ask about them as part of the larger set of knowledge. Like if you just ask ChatGPT, like, hey, what should I do for my subject line? And so, having these tools is a way to, still be relevant, still get recommended, still, get traffic, and something that, ChatGPT is not going to, build a specific email subject line checker. They aren't going to build an AI search console. And, this is part of our strategy, for search for online marketing is definitely around, building tools that, people find useful and valuable.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. With the way these tools are they're out there, that's the thing. We all have our own unique what's the word say and taste we can be synthesized into checklists, processes and workflows, and then turning those workflows and processes into a tool such that it saves people time, and it has your what's the word your endorsement on it, so it's not just a generic recommendation from AI or ChatGPT. It's actually saying that,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we at the team of Knowatoa, we've gone through this tool and we fine tuned everything, and we stand and we vouch for the tool rather than it's just a tool that ChatGPT just give to you, and it's not like it's
Yeah.
bad, but I'm like, nah, does ChatGPT really know what I want? Nah, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. So we're trying to, double down on what makes us different. And, part of that is, coming on podcasts to talk to, people like you,
Yeah.
which is trying to be, internally, we think about content as being like face versus faceless content. And so,
Okay.
um, I write, we have a newsletter that's fairly popular, like thousands of SEO people read this newsletter, and I write it every week. And certainly, I use Grammarly and AI tools for it, but it is very important to me that it is in my voice, that, I make sure every word of it sounds like I wrote it. And if you're listening to my voice here on this podcast and you read this newsletter, I think it's very clear that I wrote it, not my co-founder, not, one of our marketing people. And that it's like, oh, Mike actually wrote this. And I think that is that brand aspect of this, in the, the true sense of brand, not in the hype sort of marketing way.
Yeah.
But that true, like, brand is what you do, brand is what you sound like. I think there's a lot of value in that. And we're trying to, execute and live out that ethos ourselves.
Yeah. Wow. When I see the people, I feel like for me, the approach I'm taking towards writing with AI and using AI to create content is I'm taking the approach of something that's already been around for a long time, even before AI and ChatGPT came into existence, and that is ghostwriting, right? You see, these big famous persons, they get a ghostwriter, and they work with the ghostwriter, they share their story, and the ghostwriter writes a book for them, right? We read the book. We
Yeah.
don't say, "Oh, yeah, this book was ghostwritten." Well, what do you mean, right? We read the book. We're like, "Wow, such an inspiring book," right? And it's the same thing with AI. I'm like, okay, if AI was my ghostwriter, what's unique about me that I would want to give to AI to write this thing out, rather than just telling the ghostwriter, write a unique book and a story and publish it. And the ghostwriter is going to ask me, well, I don't really understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I'm very positive about all of these changes, in that, I think, we're coming to a point where we're seeing more and more content that, again, it's face content. It's a point of view. It's very personal. It's very, beyond just the facts. I think that's the antithesis of the, like, overly structured, like, backed out business voice that so much of the traditional SEO writing had. So I'm very positive on that. I think, that's the kind of content that does very well for bottom of the funnel, high intent conversions. And I think we're seeing more and more of an appetite for that. And so I think those are all good things.
Now, there's one question, while we talked about tools and content engineering, the question was kind of bugging me, and I just needed to clarify that aspect. For tools, and what should we decide to make a simple tool, or should we make a complex tool that has all these functions and all that? Like, what's the role of each? Because a lot of persons, like, there's so many complex tools and there are simple tools out there.
Sure. I think for the type of content engineering things we're talking about in tool creation, I think the simpler the better. And if it's something where you could actually, if it's complicated, you could actually split it into like 2 or 3 different tools. I think that makes even more sense.
Okay. So I guess it's clear on having a tool that it's clear at any given point in time when the intended user sees what the tool is going to do for them, rather than having a tool where, like, I'm not really sure what exactly does this tool do. I mean, it does this, but does it? I'm like, and they're confused. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for breaking down AI, winning the AI search game. I now understand it. It's no longer some AI voodoo. It's not
Thank
something
you
that
for
I
having
can
me on.
understand.
I really appreciate it. So
Yeah, I did prepare a set of lightning round questions, a couple of
okay,
them. And where I would ask those questions and then we'll round up the episode. You ready?
I'm ready.
What's the highest ROI content marketing strategy today?
I think the highest ROI strategy is having a brand that people actually care about. And that's one of those things that's just going to pay out for you across all your different channels for as long as you have a business.
If you had to bet, will AI kill SEO or make it more important than ever?
I think AI is definitely going to change SEO. It already is. And again, that's something Google decided, not me. So I feel pretty confident. But I think search engine optimization is a profession that's going to be around for a long time, because we're seeing a real fracturing of search, where search is no longer a destination where I'm going to go to Google, I'm going to do this search. It's something that's just going to be baked into all of our tools. It's just going to be at our fingertips inside of every application.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Micah. It's been an absolute delight chatting with you.
Well, the same.
Yeah. Over the course of the episode, you talked about the Biscuit framework.
Mhm.
Where can we go to learn more about the work and the amazing content you're putting out there about winning the AI search game, and also connect with you?
Sure. So people can actually email me directly, mike@knowatoa.com, and the Biscuit framework, the AI search console, and if you want to try the actual Knowatoa application out, which helps to automate and track a lot of these pieces, it's all at knowatoa.com, which is knowatoa.com.
Well, once again, thank you so much. I'll put all the links mentioned in the description and the show notes so listeners can click and go directly to the site. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for tuning into Wisdom Journey. I hope today's episode gave you practical steps and fresh ideas to keep moving forward. If you found value, be sure to subscribe and share this podcast with a fellow creator or entrepreneur who'd love to learn too. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter and the link in the description for more resources, experiments, and lessons straight to your inbox. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep walking your own wisdom journey. Yeah.